Mermaids have long drifted through the tide pools of human imagination, half woman, half fish, and wholly mysterious. From ancient maritime myths to sailor superstitions, they have appeared in songs, maps, and even supposed scientific documentation. Yet, some of the most enduring mermaid tales are not born from the oceans of Europe, but from the rivers flowing through the small southern towns of the United States. One such legend, anchored in the Cape Fear River along North Carolina, tells of a young Scotsman who spotted a mermaid and took it as a divine omen to settle down within the region. Known locally as Mermaid Point, this site where the Deep and Haw Rivers meet has become a staple of regional folklore, blending immigrant superstition with the mystique of American wildness. This is Sapphire, your cultorium historian, and today we're going to cover the cultural history of the North Carolina Piedmont area through Mermaid Point.
I saw when I was halfway down a thing that made me laugh. They'd made a clothesline out of the Atlantic Telegraph. The old mermaid, she came to me with a salt tear in her eye. She said, when you're 10 miles underwater, it's a very hard matter to dry. Down in the diving bell at the bottom of the sea, there lived a pretty mermaid the fishermen liked to see. Down in the diving bell at the bottom of the sea, nice little mermaid, pretty little mermaid, off came courting me. Once I caught the pretty fish, to kiss her was my wish.
Today we're going to explore the cultural and historical significance of mermaid sightings through stories and focusing within North Carolina's Mermaid Point as a case study. Through historical accounts, early ballads, and scientific curiosities, mermaids have emerged as more than just a myth. They are mirrors of human fear, migration, colonization, and wonder. Drawing from von Scribner's analysis of the 18th century European naturalists, folkloric ballads preserved by singers like Bascom Lamar Lunsford and Emma Dusenbury, and environmental assessments of the Cape Fear region, we're going to focus on mermaid stories that reflect shifting cultures and values that persist as tools of identity, placemaking, and myth-making within regions. In tracing the currents of these tales from European shores to North Carolina's riverbanks, we find that mermaids are not just legends of the sea, but deeply rooted in the landscapes and the cultural histories they haunt. The legend of Mermaid Point in Chatham County, North Carolina, provides a compelling example of how folklore becomes embedded in both place and historical identity. Nestled at the confluence of the Deep and Haw Rivers, where they merge to form the Cape Fear River, this location has long carried the echo of the unusual tale. A young Scotsman, newly arrived in the region during the 18th century, reported seeing a mermaid combing her hair along the riverbank. The man interpreted her appearance as a favorable omen. He took this vision as a divine sign and decided to settle permanently along the Cape Fear region, laying the roots for a new life in the New World. While the legend of Mermaid Point is deeply rooted within North Carolina's local landscape, it reflects broader historical patterns of how mermaid lore traveled, transformed, and continued to persist across oceans and generations. The mermaid sighting described by McMahon did not emerge through isolation. Instead, it echoes centuries of European maritime folklore, particularly the traditions carried by Scottish and English settlers within the American South. To understand the deeper resonance of this local legend, it is necessary to examine how mermaids occupied a space between myth, science, and cultural belief in the wider Atlantic world. Von Scribner's article, quote, "Such monsters do exist in nature, mermaids, tritons, and the science of wonder in 18th century Europe," unquote, demonstrates how European naturalists and explorers grappled with the idea of mermaids, not merely as fiction, but as legitimate phenomena, to be studied and cataloged. Within the Enlightenment era, a time when the boundaries between science and myth were still fluid, accounts of mermaids appeared within travel journals, natural histories, and scientific debates. These creatures, mermaids, were often described with anatomical detail and rationalized through evolutionary links between fish and humans. The cultural hunger for wonder and the unknown, coupled with the mystery of a newly explorable land and sea, allowed mermaids to persist as plausible beings within both scholarly and popular discourse. European accounts of mermaid sightings often intersected with colonial ideologies. As explorers mapped coastlines and riverbanks across Africa, the Americas, and Asia, they recorded wonders that blurred the line between scientific curiosity and imperial fantasy. Scribner notes within these sightings, often framed as real encounters, they continued to enforce this idea of a world beyond Europe as being exotic and untamed. These folkloric sensibilities were often reinforced through songs. Traditional ballads such as The Mermaid, which can be found performed through Appalachian singer Bascom Lamar Lunsford.
When our captain spied a pretty mermaid with a comb and a glass in her hand, oh, the ocean waves may roll and the stormy winds may blow, while we poor sailors go skipping to the top, and the landlubbers lie down below, 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 and the landlubbers lie down below.
Their melodies and lyrics preserved by the American Folklife Center demonstrate how mermaid tales were adapted for rural inland communities, far from the ocean but still haunted by its mystery. Additionally, the circulation of mermaid imagery in ballads like The Mermaid from the English Broadside Ballad Archive illustrates how these legends were tied to morality, fate, and the dangers of the unknown. These songs often combine fear, fascination, and even religion at times, offering both entertainment and a cautionary narrative. While trying to uncover Native American folklore within North Carolina on mermaids, I came across the 19th annual report of the Bureau of American Ethnology to the Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, published in 1897 by J.W. Powell. Take a listen to what this story tells.
Besides the friendly Nanehi of the streams and mountains, there is a case of cannibal spirits who stay at the bottom of the deep rivers and live upon human flesh, especially that of little children. They come out just after daybreak and go about unseen from house to house until they find someone still asleep, when they shoot him with their invisible arrows and carry the dead body down under the water to feast upon it. That no one may know what has happened, they leave in place of the body a shade or image of the dead man or little child that wakes up and talks and goes about just as he did, but there's no life in it. And in 7 days it withers and dies, and the people bury it and think they are burying their dead friend. It was a long time before the people found out about this, but now they always try to be awake at daylight and wake up the children, telling them the hunters are among you. This is the way they first knew about the water cannibals. There was a man in Tikwali's town who became sick and grew worse until the doctors said he could not live, and then his friends went away from the house and left him alone to die. They were not so kind to each other in the old times as they are now, because they were afraid of the witches that came to torment dying people. He was alone several days, not able to rise from his bed, when one morning an old woman came in at the door. She looked just like the other women of the settlement, but he did not know her. She came over to the bed and said, "You are very sick, and your friends seem to have left you. Come with me and I will make you well." The man was so near death that he could not move, but now her words made him feel stronger at once, and he asked her where she wanted him to go. "We live close by. Come with me and I will show you," said the woman. So he got up from his bed, and she led the way down to the water. When she came to the water, she stepped in, and he followed, and there was a road under the water, and another country there just like that above. They went on until they came to a settlement with a great many houses, and women going about their work and children playing. They met a party of hunters coming in from a hunt, but instead of deer or bear quarters hanging from their shoulders, they carried the bodies of dead men and children, and several of the bodies the man knew for those of his own friends in Teklialitsi. They came to a house and the woman said, "This is where I live," and took him in and fixed a bed for him and made him comfortable. By this time he was very hungry, but the woman knew his thoughts and said, "We must get him something to eat." She took one of the bodies that the hunters had just brought in and cut off a slice to roast. The man was terribly frightened, but she read his thoughts again and said, "I see you cannot eat our food." Then she turned away from him and held her hands before her stomach. And when she turned around again, she had them full of bread and beans, such as he used to have at home. So it was every day, until soon he was well and strong again. Then she told him he might go home now, but he must be sure not to speak to anyone for 7 days, and if any of his friends should question him, he must make signs as if his throat were sore, and keep silent. She went with him along the same trail to the water's edge, and the water closed over her, and he went back alone to Teklialitsi. When he came there, his friends were surprised, because they thought he had wandered off and died in the woods. They asked him where he had been, but he only pointed to his throat and said nothing. So they thought he was not yet well, and let him alone until the 7 days were past, when he began to talk again and told the whole story.
Though mermaid sightings within North Carolina may seem like relics of the past, their legacy continues to shape regional identity, cultural tourism, and environmental storytelling in subtle but significant ways. The legend of Mermaid Point has not only persisted through oral tradition and scholarly documentation, it has been revitalized within local media, community memory, and even environmental assessments that recognize the cultural significance of the place. Within the 2021 WRAL article titled Mermaid Point, Legend of Mermaid, in the Cape Fear dates back to the Revolutionary War. It revisits the story in the context of North Carolina's historical geography. The piece situates the mermaid sightings near the remnants of the Ramsey's Tavern, a Revolutionary-era establishment, which soldiers gathered before heading towards the river. According to the article, several of these soldiers claim to have seen mermaids bathing and combing their hair in the moonlight or nearby sandbar. These sightings reportedly ceased after the tavern was destroyed and the area was flooded, thus destroying the sandbar that the mermaids enjoyed to lounge on. But the legend became embedded in the region's cultural fabric. Even outside of folklore collections, the significance of this site and the surrounding watershed appears in conservation documents. In the 2001 report from the Triangle Land Conservancy, Lorelei Costa noted that is both ecologically diverse and historically significant. This fusion of land and legend creates a powerful sense of place. In many ways, the story of the Cape Fear Mermaid becomes a narrative device for understanding the emotional terrain of migration and memory. For early Scottish settlers, it reaffirmed a spiritual connection to their ancestral folklore. For contemporary North Carolinians, it adds enchantment to the familiar landscape, an invitation to view rivers and ruins through a mystical lens. Folklores persistent within a region can also be attributed to its ability to evolve, i.e., the mermaid of Cape Fear has transformed from old settlers' omens and stories to folkloric curiosity, to a potential symbol of regional storytelling and eco-cultural identity. The endurance of Mermaid Point in collective memory, even appearing in modern media outlets and local lore blogs, suggests that such stories still resonate today. They speak to a desire of finding meaning in the natural world that has continued to modern times. Folklore can function, and often functions, as a form of ecological memory, encoding historical relationships between people and their place. The legend of Mermaid Point marks a site of deep natural significance, where rivers merge, where ecosystems shift, and where humanity left ruin. In this sense, the mermaid becomes not just a mythical creature, but a guardian of forgotten histories and subtle environmental change. The ceasing of sightings after the area was flooded, it could symbolize a rupture not only in cultural tradition, but within the ecological continuity. Telling stories about the land helps preserve knowledge that once was, giving folklore a quiet role in environmental storytelling and place-based conservation efforts. So, whether the Scotsman truly saw a mermaid or not, or just glimpsed his own longing reflection in the river, the legend of Mermaid Point continues to ripple through time. These stories remind us that folklore isn't just about fantasy. It's how people rooted themselves to unfamiliar territories, how they created memories that held fast when maps didn't, and how memory survives even when the river changes course. If you enjoyed this deep dive into North Carolina folklore and the history of mermaids, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your favorite local legends and your thoughts on the role of myth in shaping memory. Thank you so much for watching. I'm your host, Sapphire, from Occultorium Historian. And until next time, may your waters stay calm and your stories stay wild, and for you ever to be curious.